Hello, welcome to myself, Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. And on part of our Beanstalk broadcast series, we're so proud to be associated with this group, Healthy and Sustainable Food Group, because they're looking to make a real difference within the sectors, and initially in the UK, but I suspect they'll also start to push out internationally as well. We're currently streaming live to Facebook and LinkedIn, or you may be seeing this recording on YouTube or hearing it through our podcast series. So we hope you enjoy the content of this and keep coming back, please. So, Healthy and Sustainable Food Group, what's the aim of them? The aim is to improve nutritional quality of food and availability for all socio-economical groups in the UK. They will do this by bringing individuals from different sectors together for projects on sustainable nutrition with three core principles. They want to encourage multidisciplinary working. They want to encourage sharing best practice. And they also want to encourage embedding the UN Sustainability Development Goals in the work that they do. The founders of the group are Barbara Bray, MBE, who's also director of her own business, great business, Aleo Solutions, Mark Driscoll, director of Tasting the Future, and Jacqui Green, director of Viridis Associates. So before we bring them in, we just wanted to highlight what we're talking about today, and also to encourage you to get involved with the broadcast by bringing in your own questions. The subject matter for today's broadcast is how to enable British producers to expand, innovate, and grow more healthy and sustainable foods for the national diet. As well as the three experts that we have, being Barbara, Mark, and Jacqui, we've also got Jack Ward, the CEO of British Growers. We've got Charmaine Prout, MD of Flavour Fresh, and we've got Andy Hipwell, Regional Ag Director for HSBC. So let's get the three founders in. So Barbara, Mark, Jacqui, if you could come in, please. Hello, everyone. How are we all?
Hi, Max.
Good. Hi.
And I think
thanks, Max.
I think out of everyone, probably Jacqui, you've got the most impressive office today.
Thank you very much. It is my son's bedroom. I'll disclose.
It's also the Zoom dilemma, isn't it? Trying to find the best place to be situated. So come on, guys, let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. This is the third broadcast that we've done for the group. But just to reiterate to everyone, over and above my intro, what does healthy and sustainable food look like? Barbara, let's start with you, please.
Healthy and sustainable food is one of those eternal questions. Do we even know? We want to make sure that people have got a healthy diet, because unhealthy diets are one of the main contributing factors to non-communicable diseases like obesity and heart disease and so on. And that is the crux of the problem. But it also needs to be a diet that we can sustain from a grower point of view. So we need to be able to feed the population without causing harm to our environment. So in terms of a definition, a quick wrap up, that's probably the best you're going to get from me at this moment. Excellent. But in terms of our group, I'll hand over to Jacqui to elaborate a little bit more on what we're doing.
Jacqui.
Yeah, so as Barbara said, we're trying to bring to light this sort of problem that doesn't really have a name and doesn't really have a home. And our ambition with the group is to pull people together around the table that perhaps traditionally don't sit around a table. So bringing in these multi-disciplines and starting to ask some questions that perhaps haven't been answered or are sat in two different people's inboxes and perhaps are missing a link in the middle. So our ambition really is to bring people together, have a really healthy discussion, but fundamentally end all of these broadcasts with a call to action and actually drive some change and hopefully pull together collaborations, which, as Barbara said, that almost certainly is the answer to most of these problems.
Thank you, Jacqui. And Mark, I suppose the obvious one is, and I say it so many times in this broadcast, what does success look like? For the group, what I've really learned is collaboration. I think it's fantastic that the three of you have got together. I'm not going to be modest about you, three powerhouses within the sector to actually create a change within this area. But Mark, for you, what does success look like for this group?
So I think it's, yes, you're right, it's new collaborations, but it's new collaborations to what end, I suppose, Max? For me, we really need to scale up best practice, innovation, investment right across the food system. So regenerative agricultural practices that restore health, that restore ecosystems, that provide healthy and nutritious foods. So obviously scaling up investment, technological innovation. We need the right enabling environments. So absolutely crucial, in my view, is agricultural, trade, health and nutrition policies that support healthy eating.
Mark, well said. And I think it's fascinating, the three individuals over and above you guys, the three other experts on this subject. So just to reiterate it, how to enable British producers to expand, innovate and grow more healthily and sustainable foods for the national diet. It's such a topical conversation with everything that's been going on with 2020. And in our little warm up in the green room, we're just talking about the machinations as to what's going to happen with Brexit and fresh food. So it'll be fascinating to get into that. So why don't we bring everyone else in so we could just have a quick catch up with them before I have a direct interview with them. So Jack, Charmaine, Andy, if you could all come in, and what we'll do, guys, if it's okay, if you could just say who you are, and I'll just go around everyone on that basis. Andy, let's start with you, please, with your fantastic background.
You like it? I've come into the greenhouse today. It's a bit chilly out today, so I thought I'd head inside. Brilliant.
Yeah, so give us a bit of background on yourself, please, and your role in HSBC. Yeah,
so my name's Andy Hipwell. I'm the Regional Agriculture Director for HSBC, covering across the Midlands and Wales, so a very large part of the UK, which has the vast majority of agricultural disciplines within it. So it's a really interesting and exciting area to be in across that part of the country. I've been with HSBC for over 35 years now. A few grey hairs, as you probably notice, and I've been with the agricultural team now for 10 years, which has been an absolutely fantastic 10 years, because I think it's one of the most innovative and dynamic areas of industry that we get involved in. So really a great place to be, and going forward I think there's some massive opportunities for the sector going forward.
We had a great catch up, Jacqui and I, with yourself, Andy, and what really came across, and I'm sure we'll do when we have our one-to-one in a little bit more time, is your passion and also your expertise within the sector. I'm glad we have you in this sector, and you're not, no offense to ball bearings, but I'm glad you're not in the ball bearing sector.
So, no, thank you.
So let's move over to Charmaine. Charmaine, you're MD of Flavour Fresh, and I've had the pleasure to actually be on your site when I interviewed Barbara, feels like 18 months ago. But tell us a little about you and about your business, please.
Yeah, hi, Max, and everyone else. I'm really honoured to have been asked to join the group today. So first of all, thanks very much for that. And I have the pleasure of running a business called Flavour Fresh Salads, and we are growers and packers of niche specialty tomatoes and soft fruit. We're based in the northwest, just in between Southport and Preston in Lancashire, and we have around about 300 people employed,
wow.
and turnover about 17.2 million.
Wow, I didn't know you employed so many people. So you're actually a key business to that locality that you're in.
We certainly are. We're based in Banks, and it's a real sort of growing area because of the microclimate where we sit and the very fertile soils that exist within the area. We get high light levels as well, so it's perfect for growing tomatoes and soft fruit. Under glass, I have to add. We're all under glass.
Excellent. And then Jack, you and I, we've interviewed each other so many times. I feel like I need to give you a Costco loyalty card for the number of times I've interviewed you. I don't know what you get on your 20th interview on that basis. But for those that don't know, I think everyone does. But for those that don't know, who are you and who are British Growers? Who are the great British Growers organisation, please?
Max, thank you very much for that introduction, and hello everybody. British Growers is an organisation of organisations, and we have about 26 different organisations which comprise British Growers, and they're organisations spread across the fresh produce industry here in the UK. So we have producer organisations who are members, we have crop associations, and we have marketing associations. So as a consequence of these activities, we have a very close association with a very wide cross-section of the fresh produce industry. Excellent.
Okay, let's get into the guts of this. If everyone could just step out, apart from Jack, that'd be fantastic. So Jack, We were talking about it in the green room, and I actually directed the question at Charmaine. But be interested to see what you think. Jack, what I'm picking up about Brexit is that if there's going to be two types of people who are going to benefit from the situation come January, it's going to be hauliers and British growers. Is this actually a halcyon moment for British growers? Is this the moment that all growers have been waiting for, to actually be able to command their own pricing and to have retailers coming to them rather than retailers going out to Europe for product? What do you think?
Well, in many respects, we should be entering a glittering era for fresh produce. You know, as you say, we're coming out of the EU. We're very heavily dependent on the EU for quite a lot of imports of vegetables into the UK. And this is also coinciding with a big interest in the consumption of vegetables for health reasons. And so, as I say, this should be a glittering period for fresh produce production. But as the saying goes, all that glitters is not necessarily gold. And that's particularly true, I think, in fresh produce. But what we've been doing within our organisation, we've actually been creating a matrix. And what we've been trying to do is look at each individual crop. Where are the opportunities and where are the barriers for those particular crops? Because everything is at a slightly different stage. You know, for some products, we do virtually 100% of UK consumption. So things like parsnips, carrots, peas, we do 100% or thereabouts in the right season. Onions, we only do about 50%. And that's partly explained because a lot of the demand for onions is around processing, and we import a lot of pre-processed product. And things like, you know, when you come down to things like pears, which one would expect us to produce in quantity, we only do about 26% of our pear requirements. Tomatoes, it's even lower, about 20%. But the really interesting one fascinates me because I started in mushroom farming at my earliest days in agriculture. Mushrooms, we only do about 40% of our mushroom requirements. And mushrooms are second most valuable vegetable category we have in the UK. And when you look at who we're competing with, so mainly Ireland, Poland, there's no climatic difference. There's no climatic advantage. It's just an absence of investment in this country, or it's been easier and possibly more cost effective to produce it in other countries. So, you know, there really are some golden opportunities to invest. But there are a few barriers that we have to think about, and probably top of the list at the moment is this issue around labour. We are heading towards 2021 without any real indication of where our seasonal labour is going to come from. So yes, there's an opportunity on the one hand to invest, to go forward, but how many people are going to invest with that massive uncertainty hanging over labour?
But Jack, won't that in that sort of distress situation force the likes of automation to come in? Are you seeing the revolution that's coming through, that's been much heralded in the respect of more automation to try and relieve that labour element?
I think we would like to see it. You know, somebody posed the question quite recently, and the answer was, we're probably 5 to 10 years away from seeing robotics used across the industry. And then somebody chirped in and said, but we said that 5 years ago, and it always seems to be 5 to 10 years away. I think probably the issue for a lot of UK growers is that you've got to be in it in a very, very big way to justify that kind of investment. And then you lose that flexibility because you've got a massive piece of investment. And, you know, and if crops are, you know, varying week to week in terms of how much you've got to pick, you know, how much you've got to harvest, you know, you haven't got that immediate flexibility of people.
Okay.
But you know, one or two other things worth just mentioning. Crop protection is a big issue for a lot of crops, is that we're seeing a sort of gradual erosion of our crop protection armory, and it's not being replaced very rapidly. But sitting at the bottom of all this, and this one's really, really important, is margin. You've got to have a reasonable margin from what you're doing in order to encourage that investment. And if you look across a lot of crops at the moment and you ask, what is the incentive to get even further into this? Are we going to see a decent margin? You know, it begins to, you know, put very clearly on the table, you know, this question of, is this the right thing for this business to invest in this particular activity given this level of return? And I think that's going to be one of the big stumbling blocks in the immediate future.
And don't you think with Brexit and the likelihood that European produce is going to be too expensive in the short medium term, that there might actually be an uplift for British growers in the respect of retailers predominantly will have to pay those growers more so that they can reinvest for the future?
One would like to think so, but I have to say the competition, as you know, we all know, between retailers is phenomenal. You know, and the determination to deliver food at the lowest possible price to their consumers seems to know no bounds. And looking ahead, there doesn't look as though there's going to be much let up in the short term. And it is that all important. Am I going to make a decent return on this investment? If I'm going to sink £5 million into a new investment, you know, is this the best way of doing it? Or actually, would I be better off buying some commercial property or whatever it is?
Yeah, and Jack, we'll talk about it with Andy in a minute, and also in the Q&A. We're seeing a number of investors looking to come into the UK fresh produce sectors. Where I'm stood at the moment in Bury St Edmunds, there's a £60 million investment of a new glasshouse that's gone in, and I don't believe that business would have got involved if it wasn't for some of the grant aid, but also the likes of Brexit coming along. So there might be some positives to be had along the way. Jack, I've just got to ask you, with all of that, let's call it positives for UK production, sustainability. This group is called the Healthy and Sustainable Food Group. On the sustainability side, what can you see your members looking to do to try and reinforce that sustainability message even more so?
Yeah, I think so. I think as we head towards the net zero target of 2040, 2050, depending on whose target you look at, I think everybody's got to do their bit. And everybody is going to have to change and adapt in order to, meet the targets. But if we look at net zero and the implications for horticulture, I think it's just worth looking at it at two levels. Firstly, the macro level, and then we'll look at it at an individual business level. We are only 150,000 hectares of total agricultural production. And actually, if you break that down, 20% of that is vining peas, which actually are a pretty light touch crop. And then if you add in tree fruits and hand harvested crops, probably we are not top of the list as an industry in terms of, agricultural net zero issues. But at the individual business level, probably the big things are going to be energy consumption. But if you look around, there are some really great examples of AD plants being used, solar plants being used, combined heat and power plants. And obviously, all of these are big investments. They're not the kind of things you go out and you change, every 2 or 3 years. You've got to wait for the right opportunity to come along before you're going to invest in that kind of thing. Emissions is another area, but we can probably only go as fast as the technology allows. And that's probably going to be governed more by international engineering standards, in terms of engine outputs. But across the holdings, there are lots and lots of good examples of things that people are doing. But ultimately, I think this is the issue that we've got to address as a society, is that probably some of the things that we need to be thinking about are going to result in a compromise in production. Yeah. And it's really a question of whether that compromise is going to be rewarded somehow through the marketplace. And I think that's going to be a really interesting debate, is the extent to which, as a society, we're prepared to say we're going to step away from the way things used to be. We're going to embrace a new future. And actually, that's going to have to require a change in mindset of how I purchase things and what I look for. I'm just not quite sure we're ready for that yet.
Jack, thank you. Fascinating. Charmaine, please come in, because it'd be fascinating to get your view on the basis of your business is very high tech. Do you replicate what Jack has been saying about the innovation element and also the labor element? Are you seeing that one of the biggest draws in your business is labor? Is one of the biggest draws in your business innovation, technical innovation as well?
Yeah, so Max, I would echo a lot of what Jack has said. I think to couple with the comment on margin, what's really important for UK growers is, because we take a long-term view, is a long-term commitment from customers. Yeah. But in terms of technology in the sector, because there's so many uncertainties that lie ahead, I think it's key to make sure that our UK farmers and growers have access to the very best possible technology and innovation that in turn then drives efficiency, quality, yields, and ultimately profitability. So it's really important we take that long-term perspective that's crucial to the industry.
And it's fascinating. Charmaine, how does it work? If you're looking for innovation, do you and your team just go into Google and look for potential suppliers of innovation, or have you got to create it yourself? Are you running R&D projects yourself, or is it a combination of the both?
It's a combination of both, but not so much going to Google. It's more a case of it's again taking the long-term view to establish trials internally that work for our business, but also doing a lot of research to bring in new ideas from different industries sometimes that are perhaps further ahead in their use of tech than what we are. And we've talked about collaboration so far, and I think that's a big part of the future for farmers and growers, is to collaborate with other industries that maybe would use byproducts of what we produce, so that we can produce in a more sustainable way and ultimately a more profitable way. Sorry, Max, yeah, go on.
Charmaine, the one bit I always get confused about, and sometimes I get shot down for saying this and sometimes I don't, why would a high-tech company, say in robotics, look to get involved with your business, look to invest their R&D in your business, when actually if they went into the defence sector, they're likely to get more money than if they were helping a tomato grower, especially with what Jack was just saying about that there's this desperate need for more margin return for yourself. Do you think there's a simple answer to that? Do you think you're missing out on technology because it's been swallowed up by the likes of the military?
I don't think we're necessarily missing out, but I think we've perhaps been late to the party, and there's pros and cons of that. We can learn from what's happened and what's gone on before us. But I think the big advantage our sector has is its resilience. And we've seen that during this pandemic, is that there is always a demand for food, and especially now for UK food. So I think the tech companies are realising this, and sustainability and increasing our food production as a country is a challenge we face. So using tech and innovation and working together with that, we can solve that challenge. And there's always going to be the demand for that. If not, it's going to get greater, as we've identified going forward with our labour challenges that we've identified.
Yeah, but it's fascinating on what we were saying earlier about some of these larger investment houses coming into the sector. So I've got a 20-odd year career within fresh produce, and I remember the likes of 3i. If you remember that investment house, I'd be interested to get Andy's views. But they wouldn't get involved in any fresh produce company unless it was a turnover of more than 200 million, because they just couldn't see a return of it. But now we've got all these newbie investors looking to come in. With yourself, if it's okay to ask, are you prepared as a business to invest for the future for your own business?
It's more whether it's a question of prepared. I see it as a necessity, Max, if I'm honest. I think there's a greater risk of doing nothing and standing still. Wow. Than there is a risk of investing in this area. So yeah, absolutely, we're embracing robotics. We've got trials taking place as we speak in robotic picking equipment. Wow. And we're focusing in on our energy usage and how we can become more sustainable, because I believe that needs addressing, and the government it's a key part of their policy going forward. The use of data and AI and enabling us to be much more reactive, quicker, and then turn that into being proactive with our customers helps to reduce the waste and ultimately improves the quality of product that our consumers will hopefully keep buying.
Yeah, and that's the bit we've always got to remember. We have a lot of students watching these broadcasts. We've always got to reinforce the fact that one of the best things about this sector is it's growing fresh food. that what you're growing is fantastic for the well-being of the general population, especially now with this this onset of more scratch cooking and people wanting to be more healthy to fight the likes of a COVID pandemic. So with your great fresh produce, yeah, if you can invest, do more R&D and get support to potentially take your business further, it would look to be look to be fascinating. Could you see your business physically being the same sort of shape and size 5 years down the line, or do you think you're going to be twice the size physically in the way of glass and the way of production? What do you think?
Well, certainly we're on a growth plan in line with the demand that exists within the marketplace, and I think to help boost that productivity, the use of government support is going to be key, and that will influence the pace at which we grow, because our businesses are notorious for huge amounts of capital investment, and as Jack identified, scale often comes into that. But I do believe long-term agreements with retailers is the key to give growers the confidence to invest going forward, and that will also propel the rate of growth.
Wow, and that would be fascinating. I'm not going to ask you the question, but I'm so aware of so many clients of ours having an ongoing relationship with a retailer, but without a contract, and you just wouldn't come across that in any other sector. How can you invest in your business if the customer you've been working with for the last 5-10 years is not prepared to sign a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year contract? How can you go to the likes of Andy and say our business is doing well, we need to invest because we've got this customer? But Andy or and others would obviously ask, well, where's the contract security here? But there isn't any. But on that side, Andy, come on in. That's okay. Andy, you must, as we said earlier in the preamble, you must find it fascinating being involved in these businesses and being at the cutting edge of what in some respects is a revolution. You look how well Flavor Fresh is doing and how intelligent they are on the strategic planning. So, Andy, are you excited about where this sector is? Is it going to be steaming on with no barriers, or can you see speed humps along the way? What do you think?
I mean, to your point, I think there are huge opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, within the sector to take it forward. And I think the pandemic has sort of driven that thought process of a lot of the public in terms of buying British. And we've seen, as a bank, we've seen a lot of investment. You touched on the investment houses coming in, and there is investment coming into the sector. But to the point that was made earlier, the margins are thin. And I think that is one of the critical issues in terms of that. And what we need to see more of is more integrated supply chains. And you're quite right around the contract issue. I forget how many conversations I've had with my underwriters around how the sector operates and the lack of that surety around those contracts. But I think these are things that the banks will take a view on. And we do look at it, but fundamentally we're HSBC is a commercial bank, so banking is quite a simplistic sort of operation. You lend money out and you want it back with some interest on, and obviously your principal repaid. So fundamentally, if the project or what you're looking at isn't going to stack up and be able to repay or demonstrate it can repay that loan, then we've got a fundamental problem. And this is where sort of government and I know. Sort of lobby groups like the NFU are getting involved in this, because we touched on robotics there earlier on in the conversation, and we've had conversations with many around robotics. And again, from a commercial bank perspective, if a robotic is untried, untested, it then becomes quite difficult to finance that piece of kit. But with the support of perhaps government grants, similar to the loans that we've got at the moment, the CBILS and bounce back loans that the government have done at the moment, which is sort of piggybacking on an old scheme that the government had in place. Those types of support by the government can enable those types of projects to get off the ground and make it more viable for a commercial bank to look at and go ahead and fund.
Okay, and Andy, it's my word of the day. I found it fascinating when we were having the catch up with myself and Jacqui about, and I'm just going to slightly lead the witness when he stated that the HSBC is really positively keen to drive behavioural change within the sector. Can you just tell us a bit about the sustainability element within HSBC and the fund that you've created that's looking to make that difference?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, HSBC is, as you know, is a global bank, and the UK bank forms a large part of that global bank. But we've launched a commitment called Plan for the Planet, which is a commitment by the bank, and it links into the Paris Agreement, and obviously for bringing it down to agricultural level into the NFU 2040 objective on net zero. And we see this as a massive opportunity for ourselves and our clients to change climate change as we move forward. Wow. So to encourage people into investing into sustainable types of projects, etc. We've put funds aside. There's $100 million US set aside to specifically for these types of products, and we've developed specific loan fund products, green loans that will enable people to talk to their supply chain in terms of the investment that they've done and demonstrate that they're contributing to that carbon reduction. So those loans are in the form of sort of traditional loans, revolving credit facilities. We also can do asset finance as a green loan as well. And since the sort of launch of our green loan proposition, we've lent over 600 million in the UK into these types of projects and going forward. So as I say, it's an area that HSBC are really keen to get involved in. It's not just UK, this is global because we're a global bank, but obviously for my part, I sit in the UK, and I'm very interested in UK agriculture and making sure UK agriculture gets its fair share of those funds to support it and develop going forward.
And Andy, when you're face to face with a client, would you actually look to positively influence them? What's an example? I interviewed an amazing guy earlier this week, a chap called Leon Mundy, who used to be the marketing director for Greenvale AP and Produce Investments, and he's struck out on his own as a strategic coach. And as he was saying, that one thing that he finds within the fresh food sectors is people are just so reactive because of the sector and the retail pressure that they don't have any time to actually stand back sometimes and look as to where the business should be going, especially on a sustainability basis. And he and others like the founders of this group are really keen to create that positive influence. Do you think it's also? Do you think it's like your duty of care, Andy, that if you're with a client and they're looking for an investment for something, and you think there's actually a better solution in the respect on an environmental and a sustainable basis, will you actually try and push them that way and potential funding that way so that they can make a change? Is that your job to do that as well, do you think?
Part of our role is to really understand the strategic direction of the businesses. But one of the things that we do are able to bring to that relationship is we've got over 100 specialist managers within the agriculture and agri-food space, and what those managers bring, and the reason we've got them in a specialism is they get to see what's happening across the supply chain. I mean, part of my role, I was at the Sainsbury's Farming Conference yesterday, and part of my role is understanding that supply chain in terms of how we can link that into our supply base of primary agriculture producers, which is where I'm primarily focused, and give them ideas and suggestions about what types of things they can use to take their business forward. And obviously without disclosing confidentialities and of businesses, then obviously it's sharing best practice that we see, because you see a lot of different businesses, and quite often the businesses don't get to see other similar businesses because they are are in competition, but through our position, we're able to sort of discuss those types of operations and give advice and guidance. Clearly, it's not our role to point people in a certain direction on investment. Clearly, the business has to make its own decisions on that. But what we can bring to the party is ideas and suggestions to enable a business to make a rational decision about how they invest going forward.
And do you think the sector of fresh foods within the UK, do you think that the future is generally bright on the back of everything that's going to happen come Brexit in January?
I'm very optimistic, actually. You know, I've seen a lot of investment coming into the sector, and I think there is a lot of glass being invested in at the moment, and I think people see with, you know, we touched on the problems at the ports, etc., and bringing goods into the country, and you know, we're yet to see what the tariffs will be, but I think there is a big opportunity there for more homegrown produce. But you know, the retail sector, which was touched on before, have a massive part to play in this, and you know, I was out with a packer processor recently, and you know, I asked a direct question in terms of, you know, are the supermarket offering you bigger contracts or suggesting you put more plantings in, etc. But it comes back to your point in terms of those long-term contracts and the viability of that if those contracts are not there, because you know, they could put new orchards in which take you know, 10 years plus to come to fruition, and they need that surety of contract there. So I think there's a big part of retail to play in this, in giving reassurance to the sector to be able to invest, but you know, equally as a bank, if we believe there is a market there, and the consumer is there in terms of that, then and they can repay their facilities, then we will certainly look to invest in it.
Well done. And Andy, final question from me. You look at the fascinating business that Charmaine has with Flavour Fresh. You look at Jack's membership, and I wasn't aware that we're completely self-sufficient on the likes of parsnips. So these are large-scale businesses. Andy, what's your view of vertical farming? We're seeing, I use the expression, a gold rush. We've seen a gold rush over the last year, 18 months, of people from outside of the sector looking to invest in vertical farming because they see it is there's a sustainability element. It could potentially feed the world. But when you got the likes of Rabobank in November of last year stating that 90% of people who are involved in vertical farming in Europe in 3 years' time won't be involved in it, what's your view of vertical farming in the context of sustainability and growing of fresh food within the UK?
I think it's got great potential. I have to say, as a bank, we've seen, as you say, the gold rush, and we've had lots of approaches. In terms of number of propositions that we've got involved in terms of actually financing, it's very, very small at the present moment. And I think you know, one of the issues is around that viability and the structure of the financing. And you know, you need the likes of the investment houses for those types of ventures to get them up and running with investment type finance or equity financing. And then once those businesses are proven and have a track record, that's where your traditional bank financing can come in and take over those facilities with a going concern and a business that is proven. But as I say, there's a lot of activity in that space, and I think you know, it is a space which is going to grow. To use an agricultural pun, but you know, certainly it's one that we're keeping a keen eye on, and as I say, we're getting lots of approaches, so we're well aware of the market, and we're keeping a close handle on it.
Andy, you're too circumspect to probably give direct examples like what I can, but I've had so many people come to us looking to set up vertical farming operations, and when you dig into what the research is, that they're coming back with views that they're potentially going to be able to gain 40% margin on the product that they're going to sell. Just repeat that again, 40%, and that retailers will be coming running to them because they've got a brand. When you point out to them what actually realistic margins are, a la what Jack was saying earlier, they're very, very dismissive, and they don't understand how sophisticated and complex actually the sector is. So I think with a period of time, we'll see that I think it's, Andy, your sage advice just then about just seeing how these businesses progress, and when they've gone from sort of on a business analogy, they've gone from baby to toddler to teenage stage. When they get to a teenage stage, we can see how that vertical farming sector is going to prosper, especially on a sustainability basis. It will we'll have those the people that are involved in the gold rush who then realise that there isn't the margin to be had, and it's a long old game. Perhaps they'll be whistled out, and the winners will stay there.
Yeah, dare I mention cannabis as well? We've also had a bit of a gold rush on cannabis, but there we go. I won't dwell on that one.
Well, the cannabis one is fascinating. That when Canada legalized the selling and the sale of cannabis, tomato growers overnight they became like football stars, because all the investment houses in Canada were paying tomato growers like rock stars to attract them out to Canada. So there's a shortage of tomato growers for a period of time. So let's get everyone else back in, please, because what will be fascinating now is to turn it to the Q&A side. So just going back to this, our subject title of how we enable British producers to expand, innovate, and grow more healthily. Barbara, I'm going to start with you, because you've got a prestigious background on a technical perspective, especially within the UK. What's your view as to how British producers can expand and innovate and grow more healthily?
It goes back to the theme that's been quite key today. It is about collaboration, because to me, it's all very well having some great ideas, but it's how you facilitate those great ideas to come to market. And Jack mentioned, and you've mentioned about how you have to have those kind of cross-sector discussions, and making sure that people like the NFU, who are talking to government, who are creating policy, can work together. And Andy's mentioned about how you have to have the finance to facilitate that. And I'm not necessarily somebody who's passionate about policy, but I think unless you have everyone coming together and focusing on what's important, and we know from the whole COVID-19 episode that eating healthily and sustainably is critical, because if we don't, that affects our health. And if your health is not good, you're prone to non-communicable diseases, and your ability to recover and thrive is very much diminished. So we need to be able to make sure that we have got a sustainable fresh produce sector, because that's the type of food that's going to keep us alive and well. And it shouldn't just be for those who can afford it. It should be for everybody. And until we get some more finance and more support into this sector, I think it'll just be about the survival of the fittest. And frankly, that's not good enough. We need lots more British produce, that's fresh produce that's available on our doorstep, rather than having to rely on bringing it in from elsewhere, when we could comfortably grow it here if we had the right support. And we did have very good communication structures. That means people like Andy can be sure that if he's going to lend money to a business, he knows where he's going to get the money back at some point and still make a profit, but we can still feed a community. And I think that's key.
It's probably a conversation for another time, but I would be very surprised if the likes of Kellogg's or Red Bull or Weetabix don't have set contracts with their retailers. Just comes back to the same old issue again about fresh produce, perhaps over the years giving away their leverage in the respect of being able to gain contracts and margins. Mark, sustainability within fresh produce, is it just a whim? Is it just a fashion, just like category management was 5-10 years ago? Is sustainability a short-term thing, or is it here forever?
No, I think it's here to stay. I think there'll be increasing attention, particularly in relation. We know we need to produce much more healthy, fresh produce. We've got to increase consumption in the UK. We've got a growing population. I think the UK fresh produce sector has a really bright future. But in that context, I think there'll be increasing attention and focus on how we produce that produce. I think from a sustainability perspective, it's in a great position, to be honest, because if you look at other sources of protein or animal source production, there's often a really heavily environmental cost, carbon cost associated with production of other forms of cereals, livestock. Actually, we know fresh produce, per tonne equivalent is much lower in terms of water footprint, carbon footprint, often biodiversity footprint. But I think there will be, increasing challenges and attention around sustainability, and customers and investors increasingly are going to, be asking and putting pressure on growers to get the house in order. Looking, I think, at things like, regenerative forms of agricultural production, looking at, opportunity for growing leguminous forms of crop. Big tap roots will put nitrogen into the soil. Obviously, water quality, biodiversity will be some of those kind of big issues moving forward.
Jacqui, with you've got a prestigious background with some major companies, and most latterly being the CEO of one of the biggest UK produce businesses, Bray business. Sustainability within your career, have you seen? Have you been involved with sustainability right from the get-go, or is it only in recent years? And with your CEO role, were you actually driven? Were your values, the company values, driven about sustainability, or have you found it to be a recent fad, a good fad that's here for the long term, or is it something that you've been involved with throughout your whole career?
Yeah, it's a good question, Max. I mean, I think inheriting every grower is a feeling of custodianship of the natural environment, and public goods for public well-being is sort of inherent in every single producer. So in that regard, working for a big UK grower cooperative, there was no question that every member of the cooperative was completely focused and dedicated on sustainability and custodianship of the natural environment. But I think what is coming together here is this hiatus of, yes, the environmental piece, but also health, which has probably always been removed from the fresh produce agenda because it's a different kind of ministerial responsibility within government. Likewise, climate, likewise, feeding the world and food scarcity and access to food. And I guess all of those things coming together is the bit that's been lacking before, because they're not being aired at the same tables. There aren't think tanks looking at those things in combination. And I guess they, in my mind, they are everybody's problem. And they kind of trump competitive advantage. They kind of trump outdoing your competitor and stealing 1% market share from Joe Blogs. This is everyone's problem, and they are sort of superior in importance and ranking to stealing market share here and there. And so really this piece around certainty and retailer investment in forward programming, planning, surety have to be front of mind for everybody involved in this community. And the bit we haven't even talked about is the future consumer, the kids of my kids' generation, who will be holding us to account. And if British growers are unable to meet their expectations of all of these criteria, then they will have no hesitation in favouring produce from another destination that actually has got all of those criteria. So the days of loyalty to the Union flag and British in this next generation of consumers is long gone if British growers don't step up to the plate on all of those other factors around health and climate and feeding the world.
Jack, over to you. I have to kick the football over to you, please, on that one.
Yeah, I think there is a big opportunity, and I think here in the UK, we're blessed with a very, very good climate. We have plenty of rain. I'm really careful what I say, because invariably we seem to have too much rain at the various times of the year. Everything is set for meeting those expectations which Jacqui has just spelt out. And actually, when you look at world trade, there are a number of countries, ourselves, New Zealand, who could lead the world in terms of sustainable production. I think the fear running through the back of a lot of people's minds is, will we get that all-important government support, or when push comes to shove and they're sat there doing their trade deals, will they go, actually, cheap food, that's good, and we won't worry too much about the standards here in the UK. We can afford to, undermine those, providing, we can get cheaper food from other parts of the world. I absolutely believe that here in the UK, we could very easily lead the world. We could be world beating. We probably are world beating in many respects, but that could very quickly be undermined if we're not very clear about what we're prepared to allow in under future trade agreements.
Wow. Charmaine, you're on the ground. What do you think? Do you think there's an opportunity for you and your other colleagues as British growers to really make a mark? Go back to what Jacqui said earlier. My kids don't allow me to shop on Amazon because they see it as the pariah. Are we going to get to a situation where my kids will not allow me to buy produce from overseas because of AMR's sustainability, traceability, and they'll only want to buy it from yourself? Do you think there's a huge potential for you and your fellow growers?
How we produce food going forward undoubtedly is going to become more and more important, and to tomorrow's consumers and the generations to come. So I think our challenge as food producers is to enable farmers and growers to produce the same quantity, if not more food, but with less inputs in a much smarter way. And to do that, the use of tech is key.
Excellent. And Andy, I suppose it comes back down to yourself again in a way, because a lot of these businesses, they can see the future, but they need funding. So again, you would look to be an influencer as to where this market's going. And I suppose it's just reiterating the likes of the fund that you talked about earlier. So would you, don't want to say the word discriminate, but would you like to actually discriminate as to how you lend on the basis of what Jacqui, Jack, and Charmaine have just said?
No, we'll lend to good, viable products, and we see projects and producers expanding. There's diversifications and innovation, cooperatives, and an integrated supply chain, to name but a few. And the bank has the funds available, and we're open for business. And if there is a good proposition put in front of us, then we will look to invest in that and support that business.
Okay, and just help me for those that because it's fascinating having this catch up with the strategic coach the other day. A good proposition. How should a good proposition from a British grower to yourself as a banker? How should that be presented to you to make it as exciting as possible for you to invest and for you to loan to?
It's a well thought through proposition where you've looked at all the different angles. Quite often what our managers will do when we're putting together our papers for our underwriters, it's looking at not only the positives of a project, but also looking at the negatives, and more importantly, how those negatives can be mitigated to minimise the risk within that. So, for example, a poultry producer, dare I mention it, if they're away up in the highlands, away from a processing plant, well, that's got less opportunity to switch into a different processing plant than someone that's down in the Midlands which will have 3 or 4 processing plants very near to it. So those types of things come into play, and obviously geography is a different one to alter, but that's just an example in terms of looking to mitigate some of the issues that may crop up, so that one of the other things within a business plan is also having enough wriggle room, because quite often we see businesses overstretching themselves or trying to overstretch themselves, but being able to cope with the bumps in the road, because inevitably there are bumps in the road, and it's ensuring that there is sufficient robustness within the business to weather those. Management is a key one for us in terms of the management of the business, demonstrating that they understand what they're doing and effectively sell the idea to us in terms of the concept of what they're looking to do.
And Andy, just a slight segue, because we have a lot of students looking at watching these broadcasts, and a lot of them are very entrepreneurial. I'm guessing that if students or when they actually get into business, it's not like applying for finance for a car. If they presented you a number of professionally presented business plans, and 1, 2, 3, 4 get knocked back, presumably within reason, because you're running a commercial business, but within reason, you'd be able to give them a steer, again, with your historic expertise and that of your colleagues. You'd be able to give them a steer as to, guys, that's not quite right. If I were you, I'd look at getting involved in a business for a year and educating yourself, or would you be happy to coach them in the respect of business plans as they come through?
Absolutely, and there's a lot of resource on our website that's free and available that people can access, including draft plans that they can utilise, so they can actually see what type of plan we would be looking for, and the types of presentations in terms of the financials, etc. So there's lots of resources out there. And we're quite happy to have conversations with people and steer them, and that might well be that not the time is not right for bank financing, and you may need equity to get that business started, and there are a number of different options available to them to do that. And again, we can guide people in terms of some of the other options aside from traditional bank finance to actually get their businesses up and running.
Andy, excellent. Everyone, we've spoken previously on this broadcast about what's called the Dutch Diamond, and that I went to a fascinating lecture, the City Food Lecture, 2 years ago, a year ago, and there was an excellent speaker, forgotten her name, Barbara, Jacqui, you might be able to remind me. I think she's a professor, and she stated about the Dutch Diamond, where there's a collaboration between industry, the government, and education to create this diamond. So it's a bit like on a circular economy basis. Everything that we've been talking about within the UK, are we actually quite fragmented, and we need to create the British diamond? Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting idea. Yeah, I too was at that presentation, and yeah, it did make you think. You've just got to believe that there is a lot more that we could be doing. And when you look at other countries, how they operate, I had a good fortune to go to New Zealand just before lockdown. And you look at the way their fresh produce is set up, and they've got this very, very clear, it doesn't involve education so much, but they've got this very, very clear partnership between growers, between research departments, and between the government. And it's not all about money, it's all about encouragement and facilitation. And you look at some of the things they've done, and it is just remarkable. So absolutely agree. This question of working more closely together with other partners, that's absolutely critical.
Charmaine, using you as our example as a striving business on the ground, are you involved in any collaborations like the Dutch Diamond? Are you involved with education? Are you involved with government?
Yeah, we are, Max, and I think those it's key to have a rounded viewpoint and involving those different parties. So we are involved with our local university, more for a recruitment, really, for succession planning for the future. But I think to capture everything, it's important to collaborate, and you also achieve far more. And as a country, we could improve on that for sure. And taking it down to an industry level, as I touched on earlier, I think there's collaboration between horticulture and agriculture and perhaps other industries, fizzy drinks, for example, in our industry, that we could explore further, which would bring about sustainability and improved profitability for businesses using waste products or outputs that perhaps our business doesn't need. And we'll only achieve that with collaboration. And with that comes a level of transparency and a bit more openness that perhaps us Brits are comfortable with. But in doing so, we make strides, and I believe now is the time to do it. We've got this huge opportunity in front of us as growers, and to make the most of it, we need to work together with other industries, governing bodies, and education establishments to make sure that we maximise really that potential.
Charmaine, you virtually stole my end end request of you, because we're just about to run out of time, and I was going to ask yourself, Andy and Jack, what does success look like to enable British producers to expand, innovate, and grow more healthily? And Andy, I'm going to come to you first. So if you could just give us your top line on what does success look like to enable British producers to expand, innovate, and grow? Whilst you're just thinking on that, just coming to our three founders of Mark, Jacqui, and Barbara, I'm slightly leading the witness on these guys, but we always love to have a call to action on this broadcast. Do you think that we should be looking to create the Dutch diamond model within UK fresh produce? Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now's an ideal time as we move into a kind of post-Brexit world, attention on net zero, obesity. There's a great example through an initiative called Peas Please, run by the Food Foundation, of encouraging the consumption of more fresh produce. Actually, we need a similar initiative from a grower perspective. In fact, I think there's an opportunity to work closely with that to really leverage investment policy opportunities and put it simply, a level playing field for the horticultural sector in the UK.
Jacqui, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the thing that, we've talked a lot about collaboration, but for me, the big thing that's missing here, and, I'd like to think we've got the CEOs or trading directors of major retailers watching us as we speak, but I think it's highly unlikely. So I guess, the thing really is that this collaboration has to have that certainty, that consumer-led desire. So I guess for me, the most important thing for this to sort of move forward and progress is for retailers, clients, manufacturers to actually be part of that Dutch diamond and actually be committed and be prepared to sign up for the long run. These things are slow burn, long run initiatives. And for me, to have a Dutch diamond, we have to have a client and consumer part of that diamond that is prepared to sign on the dotted line for a period of time.
Jacqui, well done. Barbara, I'm going to come to you last, if that's okay. Andy, over to you. How do we create success for British producers to expand, innovate, and grow, please?
Yeah, before we go on to that, I'll just say, having worked in Holland, I think the Dutch is a fantastic nation, and they do punch above the weight, and they are very innovative in how they approach things, and they are very collaborative in the way they operate. So big thumbs up there for my Dutch colleagues there. But yeah, success for us as a bank is working with individual producers to support their strategies and contribute to their thinking by sharing, the knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, that we pick up, and that's the experience of over 100 managers, as I mentioned, that we've got, and accumulated corporate knowledge as well in terms of how we operate as a bank. And I think the last thing I'd say is the best part of my job, and the really exciting, and what gets me out of bed in the morning is helping British producers thrive and grow by supporting their financial needs and enabling them to produce healthy, sustainable food and wealth and ultimately jobs. So that really gets me out of bed every morning, and being able to contribute to that and support that and see these fantastic businesses day in, day out is brilliant. And I have to say, I'm really missing being out and about at the moment, but it's not quite the same virtually, but hopefully we'll get there back to visiting sites in due course.
Well done, Andy, and thank you very much for your participation today. I've learned a lot from you, as well as the catch up that we had previously with Jacqui. Jack, come on, success, British producers. You are the man in the know.
Yeah, in 4 words: improving returns, reducing risk.
Boom. There we go. Charmaine.
Max, I'm going to say having a strong business that's resilient and that's able to weather out the storms that I think Andy touched on, that gives then the bank the confidence to support businesses like ours and our customers confidence to give us orders. So sustainability is key, but yeah, having that resilience and that long-term ability to weather the storms. And just to add to that, for us, it's also about being a positive influence and a contributor for the good of our environment as well. I've got to get that in there. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but I think Jacqui sort of identified that a lot of growers really do feel like we're custodians of the land and the facilities we have, and we take a lot of pride in that. So huge opportunity that lies ahead to produce our food in a really positive way.
Charmaine, where are most of your products from Flavour Fresh sold, please?
Am I allowed to say that on here, Max?
Yep.
They're in all the major retailers, so all of our customers are the major supermarkets, and we do specialise in the top tier, in the premium sector.
I'm only going to buy your stuff now. That's what I want to know, and that's why we're going to coach everyone else just to buy Flavour Fresh, because you are fantastic. Barbara, you're going to wrap up for us, please. So what's our call for action, and also why don't you give us your views on what success looks like to enable British producers to expand, innovate and grow? Barbara, over to you.
Thank you very much, Max. And for me, collaboration is key. And that's only going to come, as Charmaine says, from strong leadership. So people who are willing to work together and not worry about the competitive nature, because we need to build the industry and all move forward rather than somebody get there first. That's not the important thing. It's that we all come together, because it's important that we have got healthy food available for everybody. And until we learn, to be a bit less shy and to share data and put a confident, knowledge-based, proposition in front of the banks, that's going to be really hard, because at the moment we don't necessarily have that state-led support, and we need to rely on other organisations like the NFU, British Growers Organisations, to push the politicians and the policymakers to get that support that we need. So we're not just reliant on the banks having a good day and saying, yes, we really like this particular project. We need to be sure, we need to have that brilliant leadership and that brilliant collaboration and communication that goes with it, so we can move the industry forward. And it links in, it's inextricably linked with health. If we have good production and good availability, it's affordable, we'll have better health within the community and better health outcomes in general.
Fantastic. Everyone, I think this has been a really interesting broadcast for the Healthy and Sustainable Food Group. Just want to thank everyone, and just to remind everyone that we can now only buy, Jack, just close your ears, we can only buy product from Charmaine from Flavour Fresh. Other products are available, as we all know, and especially thanks to Andy. I think it's been really enlightening having that banking expertise, and Jack, we know the role that you do with all of your growers, and we wish them all the best for January and what's going to come in the respect of, it will be a difficult time, but hopefully in the long term they'll punch on through. And just got to say, Jacqui is disappearing as it's getting darker and darker. I was speaking to a contact earlier in Cape Town who was saying it was 32 degrees there, and I was explaining it's 2 degrees and very cold and grey here, but it's the time of year that we're in. Everyone, thank you very much, and we look very much forward to the next broadcast in December for this great group, Healthy and Sustainable Food Group, and let's see what the call of action will be for next month. Everyone, thank you very much for your time and keep safe.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.